think President Trump, I mean, he's well known. He doesn't read a lot of his intelligence briefs, but he does have a knack for sniffing out losers. And I think potentially he sniffed out Putin as a loser. And he wants to be on the side of the winners. And potentially that was part of the rationale for his social media post last week. Now, it could also be part of the rationale for walking away and saying Europe over to you as well. And, I think some commentators have made that case and there's some evidence for that. But I do think Trump has looked at Putin, has looked at someone who doesn't listen to him, is looked at him as someone who, whenever Trump calls for peace negotiations, steps up and conducts even larger scale aerial attacks. I think Trump is starting to see Putin as a loser. Let's hope that Trump is able to follow through with more help for Ukraine.
Now, we continuously talk about the importance of US support to enable Ukraine to at least not lose the conflict and hopefully win the conflict. But over the years, as US support has waxed and waned, we've seen Europe build up its defense capacity and defense industrial base. We've seen Ukraine come up with huge capabilities. Do you think the reliance on US support is as essential as we thought it was, 2.5, 3 years ago?
Well, I think US support is still very important. It may not be comprised of the large-scale provision of military assistance, but they are still a very large arms factory from which many European countries will buy arms, not just to provide to the Europeans, but also to enhance their own militaries in the wake of Russia's aggression in the last 3 years. And even if the Americans aren't providing hardware, which I expect they'll continue to do, but they provide much of the intelligence. It's very, very important for Ukrainian long-range strike. They provide a coordinating mechanism for the provision of aid. They have provided financial assistance. They're providing ongoing training assistance. So America's role in this war is important. And once again, to be fair to the Trump administration, whilst they have not asked for further packages from Congress to aid Ukraine, there's a whole lot of other assistance that they've continued with.
Yeah, well, Donald Trump doesn't seem to go to Congress to ask permission to do stuff. He signs executive orders and it gets done. But the use of U.S. long-range missiles, if that happens, after what General Kellogg has said, will be significant. What we tend to see are the Russians then coming out with more nuclear threats. And they tend to liberally spread around this nuclear word. Do you think that's what we'll see in reaction once they find out that the first long-range US weapons have been used? And should we take it seriously? It seems to worry a lot of European nations.
Well, I think that's very likely from Putin, even though we need to stress that the use of Tomahawks in this war is not an escalation. Russians have been using long-range missiles with the same range as the Tomahawk, with the same size warheads since day one of this war. The provision of Tomahawks would just level the playing field when it comes to long-range strike. It would not be an escalation. That said, Putin would love to portray this as an American escalation, as a NATO escalation. He will certainly rattle the nuclear saber. It's kind of worked for him in the early days of the war, but I think NATO and the Americans are now wise to that trick. I don't think it will be as effective this time as it might have been in the first year or two of the war.
Yeah, it's the old game of crying wolf too much, and he's not going to get away with it. But Tomahawks. What are Tomahawks going to bring that the Ukrainian Flamingo missile isn't bringing? Because it seems to have a smaller warhead. It hasn't got the 3,000 kilometer range, and therefore, why are they so significant?
Well, I think there's a few things that differentiate it from just about everything else in the Ukrainian arsenal, including the Flamingo missile. It has a range out to about 2,500 kilometres, which is a pretty extraordinary range. It is able to move much more quickly than the vast majority, even all Ukrainian drones and missile hybrids. It carries a half-ton warhead and is extraordinarily accurate, more accurate than just about any other missile on Earth. So it brings that on top of everything else. It would complement the Flamingo missiles, not replace them, because it is more likely to penetrate Russian air defences than any other missile that the Ukrainians might have. I mean, the Ukrainians would not ask for it if it didn't offer something additional to their overall long-range strike arsenal. It would, and hopefully they will get them in the short term.
Yes, it's interesting. I remember talking about targeting Tomahawks in a past life, and working out which window we wanted to fly it through in a building, and that was quite a few years ago. And the accuracy's got even better since then. But it's the stealth technology that seems to be the clear bit. But Ukraine seems to be at the moment carrying out systematic attacks against military and air defense targets through Crimea, and almost creating a clear path of air defense down towards the Kerch Bridge. We've seen the logistic routes by land into Crimea, the railway routes attacked in recent days and weeks, and Russia's now starting to move fuel into Crimea across the Kerch Bridge. Do you think it's only a matter of time before we see that being attacked again?
Well, possibly. I think Ukraine has two strike campaigns going at the moment. One is economic warfare, which is targeting Russian oil infrastructure with an aim of degrading their export revenue and their ability to fund the war. And the other campaign is targeting military, operational and strategic targets, whether it's defence industry, munitions plants, or those air defence radars that we've seen them targeting, the air defence systems, the helicopters in Crimea. That isn't a significant shift. The focus on Crimea is somewhat of a shift. It's a geographical shift, but we should be cautious here. Is it to presage some kind of larger operation against Crimea and the Kerch Bridge, or is it to distract us from something else the Ukrainians might do? I mean, they have proven themselves to be very good at strategic and operational deception in this war so far. So we should be cautious about seeing this as, the first phase of something against Crimea. It might presage something entirely different.
So do you think we've got the war's being fought on the front line, according to all commentators, but that's the tactical battle. And what Ukraine is doing in attacking Russia's ability to continue to support the tactical battle by hitting the logistics, hitting the fuel, hitting the economy, is an operational level conflict. Do you think that the commentators on the Ukraine conflict have generally got it wrong beforehand, because they seem to be measuring who's winning and losing by how the front line at that tactical level in the east is moving?
Well, possession of territory is clearly one of the measures you can use to see how both Russia and Ukraine are doing in this war. I mean, Russia is clearly taking ground, but it's very small parcels for very large costs. And if you have a look at their advance in Kharkiv, they're nowhere close to taking back all the ground they lost when the Ukrainians conducted their 2022 Kharkiv offensive. But we need to look at other measures to see how the war is progressing. I think the Ukrainians' global information campaign to continue support, keep them on the front page, and to deny Russian misinformation about the war is important. I think the Ukrainian diplomatic offensive to win over Donald Trump and his administration has been very important in the last 8 or 9 months. It's certainly got better since the 28th of February in the Oval Office. And the long-range strike campaign is clearly a part of how we measure progress in this war. And I think if you take all those things together, they demonstrate that Russia is not doing well. Russia can't win the war from this point, given what they're investing in it, and Ukraine is well postured to hurt Russia even more in the coming months.
You've been watching Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. If you'd like access to exclusive content, please subscribe to Times Radio membership and watch us on YouTube. But you can now get us as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And don't forget, you can also listen to Times Radio for the latest updates on global affairs and read about them at thetimes.com. Thank you.